Hey everyone, welcome to the Young Developer Podcast. Today we have our beautiful Danni Hunter, CEO of the UDIA Victoria. Danni, thank you for coming on.
Hi Romain, so great to be here with you on day one. This is really exciting.
A little bit nerve-wracking. So
Yeah.
I think I've got my orange juice like my mum packed me today. So
It's okay, it's
kinda
before 11 a.m. We should probably stick with orange juice for now.
Done. So Danni, how you been? How's the morning been so far?
Morning's been good.
Yeah.
Morning's been good. I've come off the back of a couple of media gigs this week.
Yep.
Really interesting way to kickstart January, out and about talking about the good things about the urban development industry, talking about what we're doing to help the bushfire recovery process here in Victoria, and just talking about some of the big stuff that we see on the cards for the industry this year.
Beautiful. So, like me, I think I first saw you speak at the UDIA Australia. It was a grand final day breakfast.
Yeah, and your
last
footy
year.
lunch.
Yeah,
It's
footy
always
lunch.
a hoot at the MCG.
I think I had a bit too much to drink
Yeah.
that day. But it was great. It was a great.
People don't leave the MCG that day till like 6 p.m. or something. They just hang. It's
I
hilarious.
should have left as soon as the lunch finished, but I think I kicked on. I can't remember exactly where I went to, but you left an amazing impression of me, being such a strong person within the industry, and how you carried yourself and how you spoke throughout the day, and the way you held the room was amazing. So initially, when I was coming up with the Young Developer Podcast, I just thought that the only person I want to get to launch the podcast would be you, be the first person. So thank you so much for
Thank you. That's really kind. Really kind.
coming on board.
Particularly because that's one of the hardest events to hold a room at, because everyone is so ruckus and everyone is having such a great time. And I remember the first time I ever did that event, and it was probably one of the most nerve-wracking. I'd been in the job for maybe 9 months, and I was pregnant with my first son, and there was 700 people in the room who did not want to shut up.
Oh no.
And I was standing up there for maybe a good 5, 6, 7 minutes, and they were the longest minutes of my life, trying to make that room be quiet, and looking at, I think we had like Chris Judd or someone amazing there to speak to the room, and I was just going, oh my God, they just won't shut up. What am I going to do with these people?
Get me off.
So that's really nice feedback. It's one of the hardest events that we do every year, but it's one of the ones that people really love the most. They love coming to the UDIA's footy lunch.
Yeah, I think it's a great day. It's a great day. So tell me a bit about yourself, Danni. Like, how did you end up being CEO in such an amazing role, doing an amazing job? Like, tell me about where you grew up. Hey, tell me about your heritage.
Well, okay, that's a big question. We've only got like 20 minutes, so we'll see. I'll see if I can squeeze into that. I'm a Melbourne girl, born and bred.
Yep.
Grew up in the outer eastern suburbs of Melbourne, and went to school at a few different schools in Melbourne.
Yep.
And had a really great time through university at Monash University.
Oh wow! I went to Monash.
Did
Great
you?
school.
Yeah,
great.
good school.
Yep.
I did a
university, I should say.
straight up arts degree, politics and history, and went into the workforce the year after I finished high school. So I started working full time when I was 17.
Okay.
And haven't stopped since.
Oh, no.
And I did uni throughout that, and
Just
went
work.
into state government to start with.
Like year 12, you knew what you wanted to do. You were going to do an arts degree, like
No,
straight out.
well, no, I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I didn't know if I would get the marks to get into the one degree I wanted to do, which was arts, which is pretty much the do anything with your life, not quite sure what to do with your life degree.
Yeah. Have as much fun as you as possible.
So I hedged my bets, and I got a job working for a law firm called Maddox, doing an administrative traineeship.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, so I did that for a year, and was literally just the photocopy, reception, dog's body, do anything for get the coffee for anyone kind of person, and then kept doing administrative positions in the property and construction team at Maddox while I was studying my arts degree.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, so then I went
full on.
It was full on.
Yeah.
And I think I worked at bars as well in the meantime. So I just had this minimal sleep, lots of fun, hard work. You just kind of like really in
your
the
20s.
Go in my early. God, I was fit as well. Like it's just, it all happens for you in your 20s.
Yep.
Now I'm tired. I'm in my 30s and I'm tired. Anyway, there's kids. So I did that, and then I went into the state government, into their policy planning kind of department area, and then into the Premier and Cabinet department, where I did some really interesting things around international affairs and briefing the Premier on the Victorian government's response when there was a whole lot of violence against Indian students, international students, and just really some really interesting issues. And then I stepped back from government and took a role with a group which is similar to the UDIA called the Property Council.
Okay.
And married up my experience across the property and construction legal sector and policy work that I'd done with state government in a role called Policy and Public Affairs Manager.
How was that? Like trying to marry up, like coming from obviously state government, trying to transfer your skills, was it quite tough? Or?
No, it was actually a really good kind of convergence of all of the experience that I'd had and all of the content that I'd worked on into one role where I really kind of grew up in a sense in the industry. Then I hadn't worked. I didn't know too much about the industry. I knew lots about the issues. I didn't know too much about the industry. And that's where I really got lots of exposure to developers, planners, consultants, engineers, policymakers.
You just thought we were all boring, really?
Not really. No, well, I'm still here like over 10 years later talking about the same stuff. So I must have liked something about it. And I worked with some really good industry leaders who were who were real kind of legends in their fields, and everyone looked up to them in Victoria. And that was a really great experience. And I was there for quite a number of years doing that, particularly focused on residential development.
Wow, okay.
In particular, because the Property Council's remit is quite broad, but the work I did was particularly around planning reform and residential development issues. Yeah,
okay. So then you've spent how long in that? So maybe to your mid-20s?
Like 20s. Yeah. Are we doing like an age? Is everyone going to know how old I am?
I'm really old.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm not really
Genetics
old.
has played a big impact on this.
Well, yeah. So then, look, I went to work for a man named Matthew Guy when he was planning minister.
Sorry, don't know.
No, no, that's okay. You're probably one of only. A lot of people in the industry remember Matthew Guy for a couple of reasons. One is all of the tall towers that he approved during his term as planning minister, and also the fact that he rezoned Fisherman's Bend.
Okay.
There were a couple of really big decisions that he made that kind of made his time as planning minister quite legendary in the industry.
Bad legendary or good?
Look, I think there were some good things and some things that might be considered not the best in hindsight, like the Fisherman's Bend rezoning. There are probably better ways to do something as big as that than the way that it was done. Mainly just because there wasn't enough forward planning done before the rezonings happened and before the area was the value was kind of captured in the area. But that was a really interesting experience. That was my first real exposure to the politics. Besides the work at the Property Council, but the politics of planning and the politics of the industry, and how the community really interacted with planning decisions and with development.
Okay. So how do you whilst you're working within an industry and you're working on policies and developing strategies for the future, how do you have the strength of the voice to be able to say no or disagree with something, although you are working with an organisation that's pushing forward to that? How do you go about that, being someone that's new within the industry?
I did a lot of research and I did a lot of talking with people, and I quickly identified who was considered to be pragmatic, knowledgeable and experienced in the sector, and I spent as much time as I possibly could with those people. And I informed my own positions through their positions and really drew on their years of experience and the experience and knowledge I didn't have, and kind of crowdsourced that to an extent. And then what I seem to be good at is then synthesising those points and arguments into a really clearly articulated position that I then use to influence government to change their ways or change their mind or change their approach in a way that benefits the urban development industry.
Awesome. Yeah. So if it was me coming into the industry, how would you, I'm an engineer, I probably don't have all the skill sets that are well-rounded enough to obviously work within the property development industry and make those changes. How do you go about starting that? if I was to go, like, for example, I'm working at Dennis Family Corp at the moment, and I've come in as an engineer designer with a few years design background, but I'm starting at as a assistant development manager, because in order to learn that, how would you go about it? Like, if you were saying to someone that just finished uni, what would be the best transition into the property development industry?
Learn as much as you can and talk to as many people as you can, and have a genuine interest in the way our cities develop, in the way our communities are engaged with the built form that they live in, and work out what the best practice trends are that you can then input into the way you either design or build or shape the kind of urban environment and the mark that you have on our urban environment. Awesome. I mean, young people at that point in their time are kind of in the acquisition phase of their careers. You're acquiring experience, you're gaining ideas in all areas of life, really. You're getting a family, you're getting all that sort of stuff. So it's important, I think, that people use the energy and time that they have at the early point in their career, as I said, to learn as much as possible, broader than just your technical skills, so that you are genuinely seen to be a genuinely interested person in the environment around you, and meet and talk to as many people as you can.
Possibly can, yeah. That's probably the one thing that when I first got into the industry and starting at Danni Family Corp, and it was so, like, it wasn't overwhelming in the sense, like, you don't know what to do, but you don't know who to lean on for certain expertise, because property development's so, like, it's such a broad field that you've got so many different experts, and people come from different backgrounds to be project directors, development managers. And it was really interesting. Like, I found that I could go to certain people for, like, landscape, like, you know, expertise. It's quite dark out there now, isn't it? That's the bus.
There's just a bus
it's
outside.
Elwood lifestyle. But it's funny before. It was so funny before we were, like, sitting down doing the take, and it was like a lady just came and, like, stood there and watched, and we're like waving, and we're like, oh, this is kind of awkward.
It's your audience.
Yeah.
Your first live audience member.
The one.
The one. It's going to be a hit, Romain.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah.
So yeah, like, I found it really interesting. Like, I struggled to find who to go to get that that specific knowledge. Like, if I came up with an issue, so, like, but now I realize that the only way I can develop as a property developer or an engineer is actually if I ask questions to people, and sometimes they may not have the time or the resources to be able to provide me with the information, but make them have the time. So I found that if I set up something like once a week on a Monday morning for 10 minutes, I could pick their brain with, like, 20 or 30 different questions I had or problems I were facing.
Jeez, you're high maintenance. 20 or 30 questions in a hit. You better brought coffee to that 10-minute meeting.
I did. No, I brought tea, I think. So it was like something that I was learning how to do and manage my way through it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was kind of interesting. It's a very interesting field to be working in at the moment, especially how we're going as a society, pushing for climate change, and who to go to with, like, design information, or who's got the expertise to locate that. And how do you find that at the moment?
Well, I think there's a couple of things in that, Romain. I would urge you against thinking you can just go from zero to hero all in one hit in terms of your own knowledge. You know, it's cumulative. Yep. And your networks will expand over the next sort of, say, 5 years, but then infinitely beyond that. Yep. Your network as well is important to build inside your organisation, but then also outside in the industry. And there are a couple of things that UDIA does that's really helpful for that. One, we've got an Outlook program, which is our young people in property, and they run a series of events throughout the year.
Tell me about it.
I
think I've seen a little bit about it, but
they run. We can put some links on your podcast website even. But they run some really good. They run about 4 events, and they're really networking focused. But then we do a lot of other events throughout the year, from policy briefings and lunches and things. But the other thing that is really good is our mentoring program. And the way we structure that is that it's group mentoring and peer mentoring program. So it's not one-on-one with a senior leader. It's like 5-on-1 with the senior leader, and their group conversations structured around different issues. And what that does is allow people to build a peer network of people outside their organisation, as well as being guided through issues by a senior leader in the industry. So that's something you could check out as well. But there are so many wonderful resources online, and there are so many wonderfully passionate people like yourself who are doing things like this podcast. Yep. There's a podcast called The Planning Exchange that's been established for a really long time. Again, happy to send all of these.
Put me in contact. Them from Melbourne?
They're from Melbourne. A wonderfully passionate young woman named Jess and a guy named Peter who run that, and they're really fantastic. And there's lots of resources through universities, academics, but also just like, I share a lot of this stuff because I'm a cities nut, I think
I saw you on YouTube a couple of times.
Yeah, I do lots of YouTube stuff. I do lots of videos.
Tell me about your YouTube channel. Like, what is it so everyone can go to it now?
Yeah, so I guess it's linked through the UDA. So if you look up UDA Victoria YouTube, and I'll send the links as well. I do videos, about 5-6 minute videos, maybe once a month or once every couple of weeks on a particular issue, or on a research update or an economic update, or even just like recently I did one telling people about the Bushfire initiative, Bushfire recovery initiative that the UDA has launched. So it's a really great way to communicate with people, and LinkedIn has a lot of resources as well. So there's lots of different ways that you can expand your learning. But I think people also naturally gravitate to someone who is genuinely interested in the issues surrounding the industry. Like we're building cities. We're building the world's second, maybe first, most livable city. Like that's a really amazing. That's a really amazing thing to be doing. And various parts of our city are much less livable than others.
That is so true.
And some people think we're doing a great job. Some people think we're doing a crappy job. It just depends on the perspective you take. But there are, the key themes of like an engaged community, an informed community, experts in our field. We're a great industry to be a part of, and there's lots of stuff that you can do to kind of get into the richness of that.
So, like, it's interesting that you meant like that you brought up creating communities. So it's funny. Like, I always think, if I'm going to design something, I want to design something that I would want to live in, and my children want to live in, and their children want to live in, because it's quite easy within the industry, and people talk about property developers and we're greedy and we're only focused on, obviously, profits. I think we're moving away from that as a general base, like where we're looking at creating sustainable communities for future generations, like, and integrating the Aboriginal community and their history. So one of the biggest things I think that, especially with a lot, like I'm currently doing projects out in the West, and there's so much Aboriginal history throughout there, and I was like thinking about like all the landscape architect implementation or strategies that we can put in, where you have like there's a little station every 400 meters to 500 meters, wherever it is, and you could have like a little tour walking around where you can go up and you press a button and it tells you about the people of the land, the history, who are the elders, and making it really interactive for everybody to actually get outside, be in the wetlands, walking around in the parks. And like, do you think we are doing enough as an industry to be more sustainable and integrating or trying to bring all of Australian culture together?
I think we're opening up our minds to the fact that is actually something that our consumers want to see more of. And largely the direction of the development industry, and we'll just talk about developers here because their level of financial investment and risk often determines their ability to do some of these things, right? Because I guess, and particularly in the outer suburban areas of Melbourne, purchasers are incredibly price sensitive.
Yes, correct.
They're first home buyers. They don't have big budgets. They're trying to get as much for the dollar that they can spend. Yeah, correct. So developers, I'm sure, would often like to do a lot more than sometimes they're able to do. And I think what we're coming to as a community and the conversation around climate change is really important to this. Is I think consumers are going to start expecting and start spending much more on these kind of outcomes and features of a development and of the communities in which they choose to live, which will be only a better thing for our urban fabric. Definitely.
So like that's a great point, because I think later on today I've got another guest, Brendan Condon, who's the project director at the Kate Patterson Design.
Oh, he's done some great work around sustainability, hasn't he? Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I think it was an article written yesterday, and I think we were talking earlier about it, and by RMIT, where basically all their houses within their development can be replicated. So they've released all their designs for people to be able to share it.
Great.
and model it. And
yeah, fantastic.
they did I think it was a 12-month study, and all their houses meet the standard, and I think it was a 9-star rating that they received.
Yeah,
and
but they're not cheap houses. I mean, that's the difference.
Yeah.
And this is, I think, where building technology's got a fair way to come, because you can't build a cheap or affordable, let's say $300,000 house that is 9-star rated.
Yeah.
How
do we do that then?
Our technologies have to improve. We've got to trade off in other areas. I mean, governments have to make it a bit easier to get through the planning and development approval system.
But it's such a slow process.
It is such a slow process.
Such a slow process.
And infrastructure contributions are very high here. There's a lot of tax on development. So all of those things have to shift and nudge a little bit if there's going to be more wriggle room to do some of the things that might have used to be considered nice to have, but should be considered must have if we're going to have an impact on reducing our impact on climate.
So, I guess part of your role as CEO is to steer the industry to where you want to obviously be within 2, 3, 4, 5 years time, whatever that period of time is. Where do you want to take us? Where would you love to see us? Because you've got 2 young kids of your own, beautiful family. You obviously you want to see them grow up in an amazing, healthy environment. So
I've talked a lot about affordability.
Yeah.
I think I'm thinking more about what we can do to have much more of a positive impact on climate as an industry. But putting that aside for the moment, I'm still thinking a lot about affordability, and in particular affordability for first home buyers. And affordability at that kind of entry point level of our housing market. I mean, the median house price in Melbourne is still like $870,000, and the median apartment price is $639,000. So
that's scary money for anyone, to be able to come up with a deposit.
And it's sort of it's scary for families who don't have that within their means, but want to create generational wealth in their families, which they should have the right and the ability to be able to do. So I'm really passionate about making sure there's enough new housing supply and that there's enough housing supply in well-serviced and well-located areas, but also that government holds its end of the bargain, and it makes the infrastructure investment that we need, and it makes sure that it's not over-regulating the industry and overburdening the industry with development tax. I mean, we pay 44% of the state's revenue base is taxes on property.
Wow, I did not know that stat.
44%.
That is
phenomenal.
That's ridiculous.
Taxes on property and development.
That is ridiculous.
Phenomenal. So,
and where does that go to?
Well, a lot of it goes to major infrastructure investment, which is good, but it also means that the state revenue base is really volatile, so that when the property market's not doing really well, like it hasn't in the last sort of 18 months, then state revenues go down and the Treasurer gets really, all up in arms, and he goes, oh my God, we've got to tax property more then. We go, well, no, that's kind of silly. So the property market's ticking up again, so that's better for the budget. But so property activity really drives those revenues. But the taxes that really come into that make up the component of the cost of a new house are things like infrastructure contributions and how much we pay for water infrastructure and the rest. And the argument there is that, well, our existing communities didn't have to pay to have their pipes put in. Why should our new and fastest growing suburbs have to pay such a high proportion of those infrastructure
It's almost
costs?
like if they're making us make up for that.
I mean, that is part of the argument. So there's a balance. I mean, there's absolutely got to be a contribution, but it should be a contribution and not full cost recovery. And that really has an impact on housing affordability.
It's crazy because the one topic I wanted to sort of engage you on was interesting is I find that I don't know if this is a taboo subject right now, but immigration, within Australia, I feel, this is a very uneducated opinion too, is that I feel that immigration dictates our property development and the construction industry And reason being is that depending on our immigration laws and how many people are moving to Australia, it will dictate how many homes that we need. So then obviously the urban growth corridor pushes out. We actually need more land to be able to facilitate. So like, how does I think you worked in the state government, you mentioned before, how do they come up with policies that obviously benefit the construction, the property development, the economy? Because at the moment, I think one of the biggest issues is people that see like migrants and people coming over to Australia, and they're like, oh no, like we don't have any more room, or we don't have this, or we don't have that. But they sort of benefit everybody when they when people migrate, because I'm an immigrant myself. So
there's so many issues I could pick up in that. Romain.
Tell me.
That's great. Okay, well, let's start at the start. I mean, immigration levels are the remit of the federal government, but Melbourne and Victoria's population is growing at a faster rate than anywhere in the country. And Geelong's population growth, for example, is growing faster than Melbourne. Some of our regional centres are booming too. So
didn't realise that.
I know. So Victoria is a really, really, really attractive place to live, which is a great thing for us and a great thing for the urban development industry, because it means there's a lot of work to be done. It benefits the industry if immigration rates remain high, because it means people keep coming here, and then that's good for our economy. It's not just good for our industry, it's good for our economy. The tension, I think, that the state government found maybe about 4 years ago was the perception that there were a lot more investors than owner-occupiers in the housing market, and that a lot of those were foreign and weren't necessarily even immigrants, but they were actually foreign purchasers. And we saw that tension really hit home, at auctions in Glen Waverley or Box Hill, or apartment markets, sales, conferences. There was a
skyrocketing prices, basically.
All of that sort of stuff. So this state government and subsequent state governments around the country introduced surcharges on stamp duty for foreign purchases, and land tax as well. So they disincentivised foreign investors from buying new property here. What that did was essentially remove the investor market, particularly from our apartment market, which wasn't great for our rental market. Because it means that there were less investors buying apartments that they would then rent out. So there was a real shift there, and that was largely political and community driven. And there was community sentiment that there were too many people from overseas buying property that we should be able to buy here.
And do they engage you on that? Like, being the CEO, like, do they get your perspective on, like, prior to making decisions for your state?
Not prior to making that decision, no. That decision was very much their decision. And it was very much motivated by community sentiment, and it was a decision that they made and told us of when they made it.
I find that so interesting, because, like, when they're talking about community sentiment, is that you would think that they would engage everybody, and being the CEO of the property development industry, like, you would have quite a strong voice in what they like, an opinion. But
I guess sometimes in politics, and these are inherently political decisions, the strong voice, if it's not in your favour, is not useful. So that's the remit of any government, any politician, is to make some decisions that they don't engage on because they can, and that's that they used the community sentiment as the reason that they made that decision, and their positioning was that all foreign investors or purchasers of property should pay their way, which suggested that they didn't pay any tax or contribution towards infrastructure, which they do through the stamp duty and land tax they already paid on that property. So, look, it's an interesting one, and the art of government relations is very interesting in and of itself. But
complex.
It's complex and complicated.
But no one knows about, like, I wouldn't be able to have an educated conversation if I wasn't speaking to you. Like, I think that they've got to be able to do maybe podcasts or release weekly, I don't know, videos or whatever, explaining some of the processes behind them making decisions. Because people just see a decision, and if someone understands the reasoning behind the decision, then they're more likely to agree with your decision, or make favour of it, obviously.
Yeah.
So I just find it really interesting.
It seems really reasonable. But in the environment that these decisions are made, they're fast-paced, they're highly pressurised, there's many, many stakeholders in any decision. And I think it's in my role is to influence those decisions. And sometimes we successfully do that, and sometimes we don't. And sometimes there's very good reasons why and why not. And I think you've just got to be pragmatic about this. And the way that the UDIA approaches this kind of activity is incredibly important, because we approach it from an industry level. We don't go in and talk about people's projects or issues or whatever, but we go in and say, look, we think what you're doing here is good, bad, or otherwise for the industry. And this industry is important because it employs 380,000 jobs. And it's one in 8 Victorians or something like that employed is in a job that is related to property. That's right. And it makes up 44% of your tax base. So, so it's a matter of, from the UDIA's perspective and the position that I have as CEO, it's a matter of making those really reasonable arguments based on evidence and research and logic. And if a decision is made by the government that is political, then that is their remit. We don't have to like it.
You're correct.
But they may very well and often do that despite what we think and what we say, and they will be held accountable for that at the ballot box. And
correct.
And the industry has to swallow some hard pills at times, and definitely has with respect to things like central city planning controls and height controls which were introduced, or these surcharges that were introduced, and a number of things that the Labor government's done that hasn't necessarily suited the industry. But this is the environment in which we work, and we just have to
go with it, find a way forward.
Go with it, and do everything we can to reasonably influence it from a position of evidence-based rationality and the rest. It is absolutely not what we do to go in there and bang heads or tables together. That's just not how we work. So it's important to keep that in sight for us.
Well, it's interesting. I think I did, going back to uni last year, masters, and I was doing a subject, and I can't remember the subject name, but it was talking about making decisions based on the social, the economical, and I think there was environmental in ensuring that you tick all those boxes prior to making a decision for the community is essential. So what's something that you're working on now that we as a community don't really know about that will obviously benefit us?
So sticking with the theme of affordability, we've been working closely with the state government's Ministerial Advisory Committee on affordable housing. And this is a committee that the planning minister put in place, chaired by a woman named Jude Munro, who is the chair of the Victorian Planning Authority. And their job is to have a look at what planning controls or what the planning system can do to facilitate more affordable housing. And by affordable housing, I mean housing that's affordable by those within the really low income brackets. And this has been really interesting issue, because it's been one where we've had to take our industry members along on a bit of a journey, because traditionally the industry hasn't been very willing to provide affordable housing as a gift, for example. Why do you think that is? Well, because it costs money, and it's also, it's never been clear within the regulatory system how much, what, to who, all of these things that will actually determine whether a system for affordable housing will work or it won't. So,
but it sort of has to work, Danni. It really does for my children, for your children. It has to work. There's no other option for us to then come together as a community and implement strategies that work. There's no other options. It's like
the question though, Romain, is that the reason it's not working now is because of chronic underfunding by the state government. In affordable housing and in our social housing system. And there's been declining funding in these areas of housing over the last decades. So what we've said and what we'll be talking to the government about in the pre-budget process in the lead up to the state budget in the middle of this year is that, okay, the development industry has a role to play. We're okay with that now. We've moved beyond the no movement, right? And some haven't. Like some organisations are still saying absolutely it's not our job.
Correct.
But we as UDIA and our members have moved through into the let's collaborate space. Let's work together space. But you have to come to the party government with because you can't expect the
They're
development
running companies
industry.
at the end of the day.
Well, but it's just we're never going to be able to provide the volume of affordable housing that's needed to address this challenge. And if you're serious about affordable housing and making available housing for the lowest income people in our community, then you've got to do something about that as well, and not just rely on the private sector to do it for you. So that's in a process now where we've made a significant submission, and we're talking with the planning minister and the state treasurer about what their commitments are going to look like in next year's budget, and that's where we have some really robust conversations. About what the industry should be putting in, what they should be putting in, how we think it could work. And we'll see what happens. But I think there'll be a really good, tangible housing announcement this year from this state government.
I hope it will benefit us.
You heard it here first on Romain's podcast.
On the Young Developer Podcast. Brought to you by Romain Grenville.
Housing Strategy Announcements 2020.
You know what? You could probably run a podcast yourself. I think you should be on this side.
It's just that you got in first, mate.
Oh, no.
Good job.
So, yeah, true. It was actually kind of funny that you actually came on, because I thought you were going to say no in the first place. No, I'm serious.
Saying yes.
No, I literally thought you were going to be like, no way, get away.
No, I'm a big fan. I mean, you got to harness this passion in the industry, especially from our young developers and young property people. It's the future. This is the future. We're both the future. This is exciting.
I think if you have people like yourself and me, who are willing to put themselves out there, whether or not we're right or wrong, just to make progress, I think we'll be going in the right direction if people like yourself.
Oh, it's so lovely to hear you say that, considering as you've just 5 minutes ago put yourself out there. Tell me in a year if it's still working for you, because it's not always fun out here.
See how much crap I get when I go back to work next Tuesday. Jeez, they're going to be so surprised. No one knows about it at work yet. No, I've told 3 or 4 people.
It's going out on the UDIA's new e-coms, Romain.
Oh, no.
It's on.
So tell me, I know we've talked a lot about strategies and what you do within your role. Tell me a bit about yourself when it comes to balancing work with family life. Yeah. You have 2 young kids.
I do.
You recently married. Home, you must be so busy.
Yeah, it's pretty busy. I have a board position as well, so I kind of
Where at?
I'm a trustee on the Caulfield Racecourse Reserve Trust.
So next year at the races, please send me a ticket.
Yeah. Well, no, unfortunately we go a little bit to the races, but mainly we work on the kind of the reserve, the Crown Land that's in the middle, which not a lot happens on there right now, but we're looking to change that. So yeah, look,
I know nothing about horse racing, by the way.
Oh, it's good fun. Yeah. Work-life balance is a constant challenge, and I think I'm personally constantly learning about how to manage it and to say no to things and to spend my time on things that give me energy rather than zap my energy, And this is one of the things that I was really happy to say yes to do, because like I said, you're young and ambitious, and this is an exciting initiative, and this is one of the things that will give me energy.
Yeah, thank you.
But that with 2 little kids can sometimes be really difficult, and I think, my month, for example, this month has just gone absolutely mental, and it's not even the end of January.
No.
So I thought this year would be different. So I've got to go and take stock pretty regularly and go, okay, my priorities have just kind of got out of whack.
Yep.
You've got to go and rearrange some things and say no to some things. And I really prioritize exercise. I do a lot of yoga and exercise, and that's huge for me. I love
yoga.
I'm massive.
I've got someone that comes around to my house at 6:30 in the morning to the yoga. It's so good.
How good is that?
It actually
private yoga.
It's better actually. Then I don't have to go anywhere.
Interesting.
Should look into it.
I
Pass you on the
should,
number.
because I actually can't go in the morning because of my kids. Because
Yeah.
my husband leaves the house at 5:30 in the morning.
Wow. So you're
know.
busy straight up first thing in the morning.
Yeah. And
God.
he works a lot of overtime as well. So
Yep.
there's a lot of single mum hours that get pulled on the weekends.
Oh, wow.
too. So there's no room, there's no real room for like bad hangovers
Yep.
or anything like that.
Yep.
So it's a constant challenge, but I think the real thing that underpins success in work-life balance for me is focusing on the things that give me energy and trying to limit the things that take my energy from me. Yeah.
So what would like a normal day be for you? Like considering 5:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
2 kids, getting them ready.
2 kids, yeah. Okay, well,
Like-
let's look at Wednesday. Wednesday was a fun day for me this
You can't
week.
drink in the morning at 5:30, by the way.
No, I can drink coffee though.
Just recover from hangovers there.
Yeah. So Wednesday morning, I got up at 4:30 in the morning because
Yep.
I was going on to ABC News breakfast at 6.
Those damn ABC people.
I know. I've done a lot of ABC this week. So I went in and, reviewed the newspapers, had my coffee. I go in and I talk about 4 newspaper stories with them about once a month
Oh, okay.
on ABC, which is great. And went and got my hair and makeup did and went in and did a shoot with them. Sparkling that early in the morning. Went in and did a shoot with them, and then I went out. I took myself out for breakfast because it was still 7 in the morning. And
God, that is so early. I'm like cringing right now.
I know.
Okay.
And did some work on our board's forward agenda, what the focus is for us this year. And then I went back to the ABC and did a radio interview with Virginia Trioli and talked about the UDA's Bushfire Recovery Initiative, which is a really important way that people can get involved in the post-emergency time where people are going to be rebuilding and needing planning services and engineering and buildings and that kind of stuff. And then I spent some time in the office with my team working through the finances of our business, looking at our membership growth and what we're going to target and how we're going to make sure we're creating as much member value as we can into the year. And we work through our events calendar as well. So we've got a really great events calendar coming up. We've got about 40 events this year that will run, a big conference later in the year, and just spent some time with the team, which is important early on in the year. So that was kind of a normal day for me. I spent a lot of time in meetings, a lot of time talking with people. I try as hard as I can to have a Thursday work from home day so I can actually get the work done that I need to do. Because otherwise I spend my entire days meeting with government ministers, advisors and media people and team
It's so
members.
important, actually. I feel like a lot of companies don't realise that when you're in the office and you have 6, 7, 10, 20, like the whole industry relying on you, sometimes it's hard to get a lot of work really
totally hard.
done. Like
so hard. Most of my team members work a day or so from home.
That's amazing.
Yeah, we really embedded that into our culture.
Yeah.
And I think maybe a third of my team are part-time and a third of them are working mums.
Yeah.
So we make sure that...
Great.
Yeah,
it's fantastic.
It is.
I love
really
hearing
great.
that because...
But even those who aren't working mums or part-timers have the opportunity to work from home to, for one day a week or so if they want to as well.
So like for you, do you have to put your kids in childcare? Do you have to go like that's... You're like, I don't understand how you have the energy to do all this right now. I'm like taking a deep breath.
A lot of juice. No, my kids are in childcare 3 days a week. And my mum's with them one day and my mother-in-law is with them one day.
It's amazing. So you have that support for you to be able to follow your dreams and your career aspirations.
Childcare is hell expensive.
Yes, it is. It's crazy. By the way, state government, please reduce the cost because there are really important people doing amazing jobs and we'd love to continue to do that. So make it more affordable. It's ridiculous.
Horrible. Yeah.
So Danni, I think the team's sort of looking at me and
that's enough?
I think they're like, I think we've got enough information, but I'm happy to keep going if you
I'm all right.
So what do you got planned for the rest of today?
I'm going back to the office. I'll spend some more time with the team. It's a long weekend coming up in Melbourne.
You going away?
No, my blessed husband has gone away for 4 days on a Bucks weekend, so I'm really excited.
Well played, sir.
Very well played by Mr. Hunter. I wish he'd stay away an extra couple of days just to recover from said Bucks weekend but so I'm going to hang out with the kids and we're going to go to the farm and just hang out, go to the park and do some
just relax,
really wholesome stuff. It's going to be great.
I think I've got cricket tomorrow.
Beauty. You look like a cricketer.
Do I?
Yeah.
which cricketer?
I don't know. Steve Smith? Is a good one.
You answered that very well, by the way. So tomorrow I got cricket, and then Sunday I'm going to take my little girl to the tennis because we love the tennis.
Amazing.
So we go
I'm
over
going
a year.
next week. I can't wait.
Oh, yeah?
Well, she's 9, isn't she?
Yeah.
So mine are a little bit young, but I reckon I'll take them next year.
It's an amazing event.
Yeah,
I love it.
So cool.
I think, I don't think I've 6 years in a row. I think
Yeah,
I've gone. It's
awesome.
and she loves how it's set up with the live music.
So
and
much
she
stuff
can
for
dance around.
kids. So much stuff for kids.
So that I'll do that, and then Monday I'm just gonna rest. I think I
Okay.
need a rest
Yeah,
day
life
to be honest.
balance.
Work-life balance. Go in.
That's right. Extra day off.
Yeah.
Beauty. They're working
Suckers.
you too hard at Dennis Family.
Yeah, clearly, guys. I need a couple of days working from home, by the way.
Well,
So-
you work on that.
I don't think
Point
that's
to
going
your
to go
industry association and tell them that we're industry leaders in that sense.
done.
Yeah.
So, Danny, thank you very much for being on the Young Developer Podcast. I really appreciate you coming on board and helping us to launch, I think, a vehicle for the industry to be able to have a voice, and people who don't necessarily have a voice come on board. So I really appreciate you coming on this morning and giving me your time, and I wish you all the success with your career, and I will be following you and supporting you to whatever levels that you need to get to. So thank you so much for coming
Thanks,
on board.
Romain. It's been a real delight to sit here and chat with you and your team. So good luck for what I think will be a long and successful podcast career.
Thanks, Danny.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.